Hi, my name's Woody McNiven, longtime volunteer here at Simsbury Community Television, and today's show is called Spotlight on Business. And our objective here is to pick the brains of business owners in their field of expertise. By way of example, some of you may have watched Real Estate Today this past summer, where Maria Babicki interviewed Jason LaChance of Small Town Septic, and Jason educated the audience on how their septic tanks work and how to take care of them. We're doing something similar today. My guest is John Boucher of Boucher Building and Renovations in Farmington, Connecticut and Old Saybrook, Connecticut. Boucher Building and Renovations have been in business since 1989. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Most of you can probably surmise by the name of John's business name, Boucher Building and Renovations, that he does building and renovations. But that's only half the story. John also buys homes, repairs them, and resells them. And what he's here to do today is to discuss, for homeowners, an alternative way of selling the home. So if you're a homeowner, pay attention. This may apply to you. So, John, give the Reader's Digest version of the alternative way of selling a home versus the traditional way, which most people are familiar with, of hiring a real estate agent, putting it on the market, and so forth.
Woody, there's another option besides what most people are familiar with, which is, as you just described, going the typical realtor route, which is a viable option. There's a lot of people out there that don't want to go that route for various reasons. The alternative would be dealing with a company like ours, where you don't have primarily a real estate commission. We're not realtors, so you're saving approximately 6% of your sales price right off the top. Many times you have to do major or minor improvements to your home that banks will require. We typically buy the house as is for cash. We can close in a short period of time, usually within 2 weeks after the agreements are done and things like that. Most people are familiar with the other option, going the realtor route, where you have to engage a realtor. You're going to have to do some improvements to get the house saleable, and there's a time factor. Typically, a home will take between 3 and 6 months to sell after you've put it on the market, and you've got people coming in and out of your home for that period of time. Some people are not comfortable with that. They just want to be done with the transaction, which is where we come in. You've got people that come in and out of your home. You may or may not have to hide jewelry. You've got strangers coming in and out. You're going to have photographs of the interior of your home on the internet. The other option that I'm describing would be more private. The transaction itself becomes public when it's done, but prior to that, nobody needs to know you're selling your home or what the price point was or the terms and conditions. So it's just an option.
Okay, that was a mouthful. So we're going to dissect that piece by piece of compare and contrast the alternative method to the traditional method. And the first point you brought up was, and let's get into the benefits of the alternative method, is the state of the real estate market. Okay, so you said under your method, you can usually close in how long?
About 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
Yeah, if there's no complications, typically 2 weeks. 10 days to 2 weeks.
Okay.
Typically.
And we just did some research this morning on average time and market in Simsbury as of right now was...
Typically 3 to 6 months. Could be a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, depending on the condition of the home and where it is.
Right. Okay, 3 to 6 months. So right there, time value of money.
Right.
Okay. The second benefit was you can purchase all cash.
Right.
Okay. So there's no mortgage contingencies or banking requirements. Let's discuss that.
Well, if you go the other route, which would be with the realtor route, you'll have a buyer. A typical buyer would come in, like the home, sign agreement and all that, and then they've got to go to a bank and may or may not qualify for a mortgage. The mortgage itself takes approximately 2 months to get approval, and within that period of time, you're going to have home inspections where the bank, or at least the buyer, will require you to do a home inspection and perhaps have a laundry list of items that the buyer and or the bank will require to be done prior to closing. That in itself can be cumbersome. They may or may not agree to it. The transaction may or may not fall apart, and they do. So that's just one thing to consider also.
Okay, there's also something called a Hubbard clause that can delay the whole sale of a house under the traditional method. Tell us about what a Hubbard clause is.
Hubbard clause typically is if you've got a person who's interested in buying your home, they probably have a home that they want to sell or have to sell to buy yours. And what will happen is if you enter into the Hubbard clause, your house comes off the market, and essentially it's still being shown, but the Hubbard clause gives that person the first right of refusal to buy your home. Most realtors are shying away from that these days because they realize that anytime the house is off the market or somewhat under contract, it's not as open to the public as it should be. So,
right. But I do know of one case of friends who are doing that with a home they're selling on a lake down in Lower Connecticut, and it is going to set back the sale of the house several months.
Right.
It's not going to happen as fast as they would like. Mm-hmm. So it does delay it.
It does.
And it can happen.
Right.
Okay. All right, a big one under your method, no real estate commission.
Correct. That's a big
Traditional
number.
method, real estate commission, you said the typical was 6%?
Yes. So on a $100,000 house, you're taking $6,000 right off the top. $200,000 house, $12,000 right off the top.
But that's just the real estate commission.
Correct.
There's a lot of other closing costs involved.
Right.
And they are?
Well, there's carrying costs.
Well, let's talk about rate of closing, like attorney fees.
There are attorney fees, that's correct. The state of Connecticut has a conveyance tax. Mm-hmm. Your town typically has an additional conveyance tax. And these are expenses that you're going to incur anyway when you're selling the house.
Okay. So that's actually going to add, in some cases, a couple more $1,000 to the closing costs beyond just the commissions to the real estate agent.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, under your method, none of that.
Well, you will have
conveyance tax.
You will have the conveyance tax. You're
right.
just going to take the 6% commission off the top. But the conveyance tax you can't avoid. When you're selling, regardless of which method, you're going to have to be paying that.
Right. But isn't that based on the total sale price?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about, under your method, you're basically reducing and sometimes eliminating after that, let's say it takes 2 weeks to sell, you're eliminating the holding costs.
Right.
And those include a number of items which we take for granted, don't really think about as part of, when you're selling. But all these additional costs, let's discuss those.
Well, the first one would be your property tax. The longer you own the home, you're incurring those costs every month. Typically, your taxes are paid semi-annually, but every month that goes by, you owe that. Insurance on the property. You've got to keep the insurance on the property. You've got to keep heating the property, your air conditioning, snow removal, grass cutting, all of the maintenance involved, electric bills, whether the house is vacant or not, these expenses are incurring every month. And the longer the sale of the property takes, that comes right off the bottom line of your net proceeds.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Okay. Another interesting thing under your method is there's no for sale sign.
Correct.
And a lot of these other things that happen under a traditional method. So why would that be important to someone who's looking at using your method?
Well, some people like the privacy. In a traditional method, you're going to have a for sale sign. All your neighbors and friends will know your house is for sale, which may or may not be what you want. You're going to have people coming in and out of the house for months on end until it does go under contract. You may or may not like that. It's some people just like to have the privacy aspect where nobody knows that you're selling your home until it's a done deal and it's filed with the town records. Some people, regardless of the condition of the home, they just want the privacy. They don't want people coming in and out of their homes for months on end. A realtor will call and say, we've got a showing, tomorrow, or we got a showing in 3 hours from now. Typically, they want you to vacate the house, so many times you've got to leave your own home, regardless of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the right way to show, typically, with a realtor. You may not want to have to go through that for 6 months on end and just be done with it. So.
Right. And in the case if it's an empty house, nobody's living there, but yet the for sale sign's up.
Right.
Could be a welcome sign to vandals.
Absolutely, and that's very real. I mean, people are still stealing copper in the basements now. It's just, all of the above, right? So.
So this leads into confidentiality. Obviously, doing it your method, there's a lot more confidentiality, but it's beyond those other points. What are the benefits of confidentiality if this is someone wants using this alternative method?
Right. Some people simply don't want other people knowing that their house is for sale or under contract until it's over, and then it'll be public record. But regardless of that, during that period of time, they just want the privacy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They don't want the sign in the front yard and the neighbors coming in. You know, they're going to typically have open houses on Sundays, perhaps. Nosy neighbors are coming in. Not everybody likes that. And you'll get that with open houses, and it's not a bad thing, but not everybody likes that.
Okay.
So.
Now, what else is interesting is, I know your company offers this service, but I'm sure your competitors or others around the country that do exactly what you do offer the same service, and that is to, clean out unwanted contents that still remain in the house.
Right. Some of the companies do offer that. We or don't. We do, and what that typically means is when you're selling your home, if there's any contents that you don't want, could be furniture, old boxes in the basement, whatever it may be, as long as it's not hazardous waste, of course. We'll take the house as is. Take out your antiques, your valuables that you and your family want. Leave the rest behind. We'll take care of it. We'll empty out the contents, and we like to give as much as we can to charities. There are charities that will come in and take used furniture, refurbish it, and resell it to people with lower economic scale, and that we'd like to do as much as possible. But the point being is you don't have to come in on weekends, your holidays or whatever, and try to empty out the contents just to make it saleable. We'll just do that as part of our service.
Okay. So we know it's quick cash using this method,
right,
versus average time on the market, which is 3 to 6 months. Talk about your rule of thumb, and I believe this applies mainly to holding costs.
Correct. If you have a house that's vacant, even if it's occupied and for sale, let's say for a period of time, typically it costs about 1% of the value of the sale price to hold the house. So in other words,
per month.
Per month, that's correct, yes. So if you've got a $100,000 house, it's costing you $1,000 a month just to hold the property. That's not including a mortgage. This is just typical expenses. $200,000 house is costing you about $2,000 a month on average just to keep the house for sale till it sells. So having said that, obviously the sooner you can close that window, the more money you'll have in your pocket.
Right.
So that's
absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the typical profile of a seller who would use this alternative method. And the first one would be, we talked about it earlier, people who want to move out quickly.
Right.
Let's discuss that profile.
Well, it runs the full gamut. It can be somebody who inherited a home. Many times they live out of state, and they have a sibling in state, another one out of state, and typically the one in state has to do all the work. They're trying to clean it out, trying to get ready for sale. The one out of state feels guilty, but they're out of state. They, want to get the house cleaned out, ready for sale. It's in their best interest most of the time to just, just call somebody who will just take it off your hands, pay cash, and be done with it. Considering the holding costs and everything involved, bottom line is you'll probably be better off going that route.
Well, that sounds a little bit closer to an estate type sale, which we'll get into in a moment.
Okay.
And you told me you gave me an anecdote about, was it a divorced woman?
It was a woman who's owned the home probably for 30 years. She chose not to be a homeowner anymore. House was paid off. There was no problems financially. She just was tired of owning a home and the maintenance. So she chose to sell the home to us and move into an apartment. And that's exactly what we did. She took what she wanted. She actually moved locally, left everything behind that she didn't want, and we purchased it for cash as is. She was very happy, and just to move on with her life and be done with that.
Okay. But you said the typical profile, or who you see most, are those who are in an estate sale situation, where let's say their parents have passed away, they're an executor, they got to take care of the home.
Right.
Tell us what you've seen there.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, they just want to be done with it. I mean, it's taking every free moment of their time, and some of the family members are involved, others are not involved. That causes friction in any family, whatever the dynamics may be. they just don't like doing it, and they just want to be done with it and not have to drag it on for perhaps 6 months. So,
Okay. I've got a case study for you.
great.
All right? And paper's there in front of you, and this is a real live estate situation, and it's very personal to me because it has to do with my late mother. I was the executor of her estate. She had a home here in Simsbury. Actually, it was a Weetog. It was a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, neo-colonial, built in the mid-60s. She and my father moved into it in the mid-70s. And no improvements, nothing had been done to it in years. I had it appraised in October of 2011 at $270,000. But then we had to go to work.
Typical.
We knew that it took about three to 4 months just to clear all the stuff out, and that was basically up to myself and my wife, because I have 3 sisters who live out of state. So there was that time. So the holding costs. There was, again, the roughly between the time my mother died and we put it on when it sold at the end of June of 2012, I'm going to say between taxes and holding costs, it was between $4,000 and $5,000. But then we had to do repairs. We knew that there were repairs, okay? So the repairs I did cost about $11,000. Then when we put it on the market, when the buyer got their bank financing, the bank said we've got to do additional repairs, and that was another, as you can see here, $19,000. Okay, so total just repair cost to get it to the sale was over $30,000. It's a lot of money. In my case, it wasn't coming out of my own pocket. My parents had a fairly good estate, so it was paid out of the estate. But that's not the case with everybody.
Correct.
I'm sure you've seen some children where they have nothing. The only value is the home itself.
Right.
Okay? So there is no money to pay for these things. So imagine going to someone like you is a better option.
It is. We see it a lot where people don't have the money or don't want to spend the money. They need the money for additional home care. The person may or may not be deceased. They have to go into an assisted living. They need the money out of the house, and they don't have money to put into it. So it's a viable option to, refer to a company like us to just take it off your hands and be done with it and move on.
Okay. So as I said before, it was $30,000 in repairs. But then, of course, there were closing costs. The real estate's commission, which is about $14,000. And then the other closing costs we talked about, including the conveyance tax, which brought it all up to about $17,500. So here the home sold for close to $280,000. But the net at the end of the day, after all these costs and expenses for repairs, real estate commissions, other taxes, holding costs, came out to about $229,000. So I wish I'd known about you.
Yeah.
I may have done better under your situation than this situation. And of course, it took 8 months to sell. So there was that whole time. Your case, 2 weeks. It's not quite correct. It actually only took 3 months to sell from the time it went on market. But entire time from when my mother passed to when we sold it was an 8-month period.
Right.
Which could have been vastly reduced time-wise.
Right.
Using a company like yours.
$40,000 difference there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So now John's going to give you some tips for homeowners right now, regardless what direction you're going to go in terms of future sale. Tell a homeowner right now who's anticipating retiring, moving, next year, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but not right away. Not right away. The house is nowhere near on the market, but things they can do right now to increase the value of their home.
You can do a lot of things without spending a lot of money. People in today's market want everything light and bright, and it's an old saying in the real estate world that neutral colors, things of that nature. But typically, you can do a lot of improvements without spending a lot of money. Light fixtures are inexpensive now. You can change out the old 1950s and 1960s light fixtures, get those installed. Change your electrical plates, your switch plates. Just spruce that up. Flooring is a big deal. If you can replace or clean carpeting, painting, as I mentioned, is very important. Declutter your closets. People are going to look in your closets when they're touring your home, whether you like it or not. They're looking for the volume of the space. Cabinets, clean all those out. Declutter your home as much as possible. And when people do come in and look at it, then they realize what the space actually is. Landscaping is big. If you have these old overgrown shrubs, cut them down, put smaller ones in. Make your house curb appeal.
Okay, that would fall more into now it's imminently going to go on the market.
Right.
Okay, and that was my next question: is now you know you're putting it up for sale for real.
Right.
What should you be doing then?
Well, curb appeal is huge, as I mentioned. You know, the landscaping is essential. Take a good look at your home and make yourself the buyer and say, you know what, I don't really like that shrub. It's in the picture window now. Even if you've got good siding, get it power washed. How's the roof look? You might have to replace your roof. And again, we're talking about going the traditional route as opposed to using a company like ours who will buy it as is. But if you're going to go the traditional route, make it light, bright, neat, and clean. And stand back and make believe you've never seen the home before, or get a second opinion, perhaps from a neighbor or relative, and say, "What do you think of my house when I walk?" Change faucets. You know that's inexpensive. Things of that nature.
Okay, which I imagine you see a lot because that's the other half of your business is renovations.
Correct.
People who may not use your alternative method of selling, but will use you to help spruce up their home for a traditional.
Correct. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else did you tell me? Okay. Well, painting. Did you mention that before? Let's talk about that again. How important painting? You said neutral and
neutral. You know, make it fresh paint. You know, neutral colors. Don't know dark greens, dark reds, dark blues. It's just people just want to see the rooms in a neutral color. They can paint after they buy the house, but typically a person may get turned off by a red room or a dark blue room, and it's only paint. But in their own mind, it encloses the size of the space. If you go with a light, bright color, it kind of enhances the room.
Okay, good. Now, most people think about increasing the value of the home. They think automatically kitchens and bathrooms, which can be very expensive propositions.
Right.
When is this a wise idea to do? When is it not?
Our experience is if you're going to sell your home, it's probably not worth the expense to completely renovate your kitchen or your bathroom. You're not going to recoup all of your money. You can spruce it up. Kitchens and bathrooms should be remodeled if you're going to stay in the house for a period of time, perhaps 5 to 10 years. You may recoup your money, but typically you won't. It'll take a period of time. You can spruce up your kitchen by, again, the faucets. You might even want to replace your countertops. The cabinets may be in good condition. You can paint them, change the hardware. Same thing with the bathroom. Change out the vanity if you can. Toilets are relatively inexpensive. Same thing, get rid of the old toilet. Bathtub, different option. You may or may not want to do that. Now you're getting into a complete remodel, but try to make it somewhat clean and neat.
Okay, good. All right, I think we're just about reaching our conclusion here. John, thank you very much for being with us today. As a message to other business owners out there in Simsbury, if you'd like to come on and talk about your field of expertise, by all means, just contact us here at SCTV. Another thing I'd like to bring up is SCTV is currently undergoing a capital campaign. We really need to get new equipment to upgrade what we currently have, because when that goes, it goes. We can't replace it because technology today is just changing at a very rapid pace. So some of you may have seen our fundraising, our capital campaign letter out there. If you have, please donate. We really need the funds. And also for business owners, we do have a business owner sponsorship of which John is a proud member. So he gets airtime on SCTV, his business, as well as on our website. So business owners, please consider that too, as well as coming and talking to us at SCTV. This concludes Spotlight on Business for today.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.